As her index finger glides over the Lonely Hearts column, the woman destined to be recognized as one of history's most notorious Black Widows comes to a sudden halt. A smile tugs at her lips, for in that instant she senses destiny's convergence. This is the one, she muses, her mind weaving vivid images of a shared future where her own heart finds solace in the embrace of another lonely soul, fulfilling the long-awaited romance she had forever yearned for. Yet her true motive conceals a grim and chilling truth. With calculated coldness, she will bring about the man's demise, as well as those close to him. Throughout her deranged existence, she will perpetrate unspeakable horrors, all the while sporting a hauntingly wide smile. Step into the unsettling world of the Giggling Granny, a woman who turned the loss of a spouse into a macabre profession. Born on November 4th, 1905, in a quaint rural town of Alabama, she entered this world with the name Nancy Hazel. However, her early years proved far from idyllic, as she and her 4 siblings endured a challenging childhood. Bound by their father's unyielding work ethic, school and friendships remained elusive, overshadowed by the demands of toiling on their family farm. It was during her tender age of 7 that an incident occurred, possibly laying the groundwork for the disturbing path she would embark upon as a notorious serial killer later in life. Following a fateful incident during a train ride, young Nancy suffered a head injury that would cast a dark shadow over her life. In the aftermath, she battled with prolonged episodes of crippling depression and occasional moments of disorientation. While it is plausible that the injury played a role in her later abhorrent actions, Nancy's troubled childhood encompassed more than just physical trauma. Her father, a man of few words but a hair-trigger temper, proved to be not only strict, but also exceedingly puritanical, intensifying the challenges she faced during her formative years. Yearning for a life akin to her peers, the young girl's desires were simple, experiencing the joy of going on dates and eventually sharing that cherished first kiss by the river. Yet these dreams remained out of reach, as her father imposed strict limitations on her and her sisters, forbidding any interaction with boys. In fact, he went so far as to decree that they should abstain from wearing dresses or skirts, compelling them to dress in a manner that concealed their femininity, intentionally adopting an unappealing appearance. Under the guise of protection, their father convinced them that he was safeguarding them from the advances of mischievous suitors who would bring nothing but ruin to their lives. However, these admonitions wouldn't suppress the young girl's dreams. Whenever her parents were absent from the house, Nancy would surreptitiously enter her mother's closet, eagerly extracting stacks of romance magazines hidden within. Engrossed in the captivating narratives, she would lose herself in the pages, momentarily envisioning a glamorous version of herself, adorned and accompanied by a savior who would liberate her from the desolate depths of her loveless existence. Unbeknownst to her, the very same newspaper that held the Lonely Hearts column she innocently perused would later become a source for selecting her victims. Destiny intervened when she encountered her knight in shining armor at the tender age of 16. A man by the name of Charlie Braggs entered her life, employed alongside her at the linen factory. Their courtship endured for approximately 4 months, eventually leading them to the decision that it was time to tie the knot. Surprisingly, Nancy's father expressed his approval of the union. Being averse to the concept of casual dating, he informed Nancy that if she wished to be with Charlie, marriage was the sole path to pursue. In the span of a mere 4 years, the couple welcomed 4 children into their lives. However, their relationship was marred by challenges. Nancy heavily indulged in smoking, while Charlie found solace in heavy drinking. Mutual suspicions of infidelity arose during their intoxicated arguments. Nancy's once cherished vision of romance was shattered, leading her to take a path that would become all too familiar to her. A path stained with acts of murder. At the young age of 22, after being married for 6 years, a tragic event unfolded as 2 of their vibrant and healthy children inexplicably passed away. The loss was sudden and bewildering. While it was officially attributed to accidental food poisoning, the true motive behind their deaths can be traced to the mother's desire for a more tranquil household. Unbeknownst to anyone at the time, this marked the initial emergence of the serial killer within her, setting in motion a harrowing sequence of events. Her actions instilled such intense fear in her husband that he eventually made the decision to leave her, seeking refuge from her terrifying presence. Initially, he took one of their children with him, but later returned the child to Nancy. We will revisit his experiences and the peculiar insights he had about Nancy later on. Now, left lonely once again with 2 children to care for, Nancy found solace in an unconventional remedy for her misery: the newspaper and its captivating Lonely Hearts column. Within the pages of the newspaper, Nancy discovered a seemingly enchanting advertisement placed by a man named Robert Franklin Harrelson. However, as life often unfolds, the apparent perfect Prince Charming turned out to be far from ideal. Robert had a criminal record for assault and was enslaved by a relentless dependence on alcohol, consuming a bottle of whiskey on a daily basis. Despite enduring regular beatings and enduring continuous verbal abuse, Nancy, along with her 2 children, remained with him for many years. The complexities of their situation held them captive, leading them to endure an agonizing cycle of mistreatment. When Nancy reached the age of 37, her daughter Malvina gave birth to a child named Robert Lee Haynes, making Nancy a grandmother. However, it became apparent that Nancy was not particularly enthused about this new role. The evidence lies in what transpired with Malvina's second child. In the aftermath of a laborious and exhausting delivery, Malvina found herself confined to the hospital, utterly drained. Her state of fatigue was compounded by the lingering effects of the ether administered by the doctors. In her groggy state, Malvina's eyes fluttered open, and to her disbelief, she perceived an image of her mother standing in the corner of the hospital room, cradling her newborn child. With her vision blurred and senses dulled, she watched in sheer horror as her mother, in a nightmarish sequence, inserted a hatpin into the soft head of the baby, piercing it into the delicate brain. Overwhelmed by exhaustion, Malvina succumbed to unconsciousness once again, rationalizing that what she had just witnessed must have been a twisted figment of her imagination. Desperate for answers and filled with grief, Malvina called out to her husband, who somberly entered the room. He bore the heartbreaking news that their baby had passed away, leaving doctors puzzled by the mysterious circumstances surrounding the death. Surprisingly, Malvina did not direct blame towards her mother, potentially attributing the incident to a mere figment of her imagination or a haunting premonition of a natural outcome. However, following this tragic event, Malvina and her husband gradually drifted apart, their shared experience contributing to the growing distance between them. Nancy's propensity for killing had yet to be extinguished. Malvina found companionship with another man, a soldier, amidst the chaos of World War II. To Malvina, their union appeared to be a perfect match, a love story unfolding. However, for Nancy, it marked the collision of disaster. Now, not only was she entangled in the turmoil of her abusive relationship, but she also found herself in conflict with her own daughter. The once close bond between Nancy and Malvina became strained, intensifying the already tumultuous dynamics within the family. In the midst of their heated argument, a tragic outcome unfolded, resulting in the loss of another life. On July 7, 1945, Malvina's second daughter tragically passed away, with the cause initially attributed to asphyxiation from unknown causes. However, suspicions arose when it was discovered that Nancy had taken out a life insurance policy worth $500 on the child. Given this revelation, it became highly probable that yet another murder had taken place, shrouded in the guise of unknown circumstances. As the year 1945 drew to a close, a wave of jubilation swept across the American public. The joyous news of Japan's surrender to the Allied powers ignited celebrations and exultant gatherings that spanned from one end of the United States to the other. Even Nancy's husband, known for his proclivity for excessive drinking, enthusiastically embraced the occasion, eagerly immersing himself in the festivities. Upon returning home from the raucous party, fueled by alcohol, Nancy's husband attempted to coerce her into bed, issuing a threat as he spoke his final words to her. His ominous declaration conveyed that if she didn't comply with his demands, he wouldn't be around the following week. Unfazed by his words, the next day Nancy discovered her husband's clandestine cache of corn whiskey while tending to her roses in the garden. With an eerie calmness, she retreated back into the house, seemingly unfettered by the revelation. With a calculated demeanor, Nancy reached into a cupboard and retrieved a container of rat poison, silently acknowledging the sinister purpose it would serve. Returning to the whiskey bottle, she carefully tainted its contents. Her violent and abusive husband would not survive the night. At the age of 40, Nancy contemplated the potential challenges of starting a new family. Nevertheless, fueled by a glimmer of hope within her darkened heart, she once again immersed herself in the pursuit of companionship by scouring the lonely columns of newspapers. Fate seemed to have a recurring pattern in Nancy's life, as she encountered another man, Arlie Lanning, in her quest for companionship. However, luck did not favor her, as Arlie proved to be another man deeply entangled with whiskey and extramarital affairs. Despite their eventual marriage, their union was far from harmonious. Behind closed doors, the couple engaged in frequent arguments, yet to the outside world, their relationship appeared idyllic, creating a stark contrast between the facade they presented to the townsfolk and the turmoil within their own home. Following the mysterious death of Arlie, the townsfolk rallied around Nancy, offering their support. With a seemingly genuine display of emotion, Nancy, known for her active participation in the church community, tearfully shared her version of events. She recounted how Arlie had sat down one morning to enjoy a cup of coffee and a bowl of prunes that she had prepared for him. Standing beside Arlie's coffin, she shed tears and remarked on his seemingly healthy appearance. Tragically, just 2 days after Arlie's demise, Nancy mourned his passing, expressing her efforts to care for him during his final days. In a poignant moment, Arlie uttered his last words to Nancy, attributing his fate to the coffee he consumed. When news of Nancy's house burning to the ground reached the townsfolk, they extended their well wishes once more, unaware that she had profited from an insurance claim on the property. With newfound financial resources, Nancy embarked on a journey to reunite with one of her sisters. However, her sister's ailing health confined her to the confines of her bed, and tragically she passed away shortly after Nancy's arrival. Now in her mid-40s and once again single, Nancy opted for a different approach to finding companionship. Instead of perusing the Lonely Hearts columns, she opted to join a dating service known as the Diamond Circle Club. Through the matchmaking service, Nancy crossed paths with a man named Richard L. Morton. Enthralled by Nancy's charisma and her ever-present smile, Richard was captivated by her allure. In 1952, the couple exchanged vows and tied the knots in Emporia, Kansas. Unlike her previous spouses, Richard did not struggle with alcohol-related issues. However, he did have a proclivity for engaging in short-lived relationships with other women, which became a point of contention within her marriage. Despite the outward appearance of a relatively normal life, an underlying darkness persisted within Nancy. When her mother moved in with the newlyweds due to a hip injury, it seemed like an act of care and support. However, a few months later, tragedy struck as Nancy's mother unknowingly consumes one of Nancy's poisoned concoctions, leading to her untimely demise and burial 6 feet under. The sinister nature of Nancy's actions remained concealed, leaving the impression of an ordinary, albeit grieving, household. The curious fact that several people who came into contact with Nancy met untimely deaths might indeed raise suspicions. However, various factors contributed to the lack of scrutiny surrounding these events. Firstly, Nancy's ability to maintain a facade of normalcy and charm often masked her sinister intentions. Additionally, the deaths were often attributed to natural causes or accidents, obscuring any direct link to Nancy's involvement. Furthermore, the prevailing social and cultural context, coupled with limited forensic knowledge and resources, might have hindered thorough investigations into these cases. These circumstances allowed Nancy to continue her dark activities without arousing significant suspicion or scrutiny. The lack of suspicion towards Nancy's activities can be attributed to her ability to deceive others with a jovial, charming, and seemingly bubbly personality. This allowed her to remain undetected as a killer. Shortly after the murders of her mother and husband, Nancy encountered another man named Samuel Doss, a minister in the Church of Nazarene. He himself had endured immense tragedy, having lost his wife and 9 children in a devastating tornado in Arkansas. While he gathered sympathy for his past misfortune, Nancy's perspective on him was far from ideal. Despite his upstanding character and lack of vices, Samuel's strict adherence to conservative Christian values, including his disapproval of Nancy's indulgence in romance novels, created tensions between them. His disapproving gestures further strained their relationship, highlighting the underlying conflict between Nancy's desires and Samuel's conservative ideals. Samuel's controlling behavior extended beyond their differing interests. He exerted strict control over their finances and imposed a curfew, insisting on both of them being in bed by 9:30 p.m. One day, as Nancy was watching TV, Samuel entered the room and abruptly switched it off. He asserted his long-standing Christian values and demanded that Nancy conform, claiming that she didn't need distractions like radios or televisions. His attempts to mold Nancy into his ideal image of a Christian woman created further tension within their relationship and fueled Nancy's growing resentment. Following Samuel's controlling behavior and their strained relationship, he fell ill and was admitted into hospital. Initially attributing his symptoms to a flu bug, It was later revealed he had a severe infection in his digestive tract. Despite his release from the hospital, Samuel's health deteriorated rapidly, and 7 days later, he was discovered deceased in an armchair. Nancy remained unaffected by Samuel's passing, as she had taken out 2 life insurance policies on him prior to his death. However, her actions did not escape the attention of a particular doctor who had treated Samuel during his illness. Skeptical of the notion that his earlier sickness alone could have led to his demise, the doctor ordered an autopsy to investigate further. The results of the autopsy were clear. Samuel had been poisoned with a substantial amount of arsenic, a lethal dose by any measure. The evidence pointed to foul play, raising suspicions and casting a dark shadow over Nancy's involvement in his death. The truth behind Samuel's illness and subsequent death gradually emerged, revealing that she had initially administered a small amount of rat poison to him in a cup of coffee during his first hospitalization, unintentionally underestimating the dose. Determined to succeed in her deadly intentions, she proceeded to give him a larger dose of poison, this time concealed within a substantial serving of stewed prunes. The admission of her calculated actions painted a chilling picture of her sinister intentions and disregard for human life. During the course of the interrogation, Nancy's unnerving demeanor persisted, with constant giggles accompanying her chilling revelations. As the investigators delved deeper into her crimes, she shockingly confessed to having laced sweet potato pies with arsenic, referring to her deceased husbands as her sweet potato pies, with a disturbingly wide grin on her face. It was these macabre details that earned her the infamous monikers of the Giggling Granny and the Jolly Black Widow, highlighting the twisted nature of her actions and the unsettling joy she found in recounting her crimes. Nancy's response to why she killed her last husband, citing trivial reasons like television programs and sleeping conditions, reflects her twisted perspective and lack of remorse. Although she confessed to 4 killings of her 5 husbands, she chose not to admit to the other murders she was suspected of. Nancy's nonchalant attitude and cheerful demeanor during the interviews demonstrate her detachment from the gravity of her crimes. Her statements about killing some of the men because they got on her nerves, and her claims of searching for the perfect mate reveal a distorted view of relationships and a lack of empathy for her victims. The fact she was already engaging with another man through love letters shortly after killing her last husband underscores her manipulative and insincere nature. The first husband's statement sheds light on the turbulent nature of his relationship with Nancy. His refusal to eat anything she prepared indicated a deep mistrust and concern for his own well-being. The absence of a life insurance policy suggests that Nancy's motive for killing her subsequent husbands may have been influenced by financial gain. The fact that he considers himself fortunate to have survived further emphasizes the danger and toxicity that Nancy posed within her marriage. "I was terrified of Nannie. Absolutely terrified," he confessed. As the trial reached its conclusion, the judge peered down at her and solemnly stated, "You comprehend that the court's only remaining decision is whether to impose a sentence of life imprisonment or death?" She nodded in agreement. Ultimately, the judge opted for a life sentence, reasoning that imposing the death penalty would set an unfavorable precedent due to her being a woman. As she departed the courtroom, a throng of reporters gathered around her, eager for a glimpse of the notorious figure. Laughing and smiling, she nonchalantly declared her lack of concern about spending the remainder of her days behind bars. Inside the prison walls, She was known as a jovial individual, often cracking jokes and maintaining harmonious relationships with fellow inmates. During a visit from a curious reporter, she jestingly remarked, "Whenever they've understaffed the kitchen in here, I'm always ready to lend a hand, but they never seem to let me." In 1965, at the age of 59, Nancy, also known as the Giggling Granny, succumbed to leukemia after spending a decade behind bars. Throughout her life, she was believed to have been responsible for the deaths of 11 people in total.